Bon après-midi, mesdames et messieurs. Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sung-Hoon Kim, and I would like to invite all of you to the International Civil Aviation Organization's 40th Assembly SkyTalks. During the course of 2 weeks, we have 68 presentations for you from aviation professionals around the globe. I would like for you to check out our ICAO SkyTalks channel on YouTube for more information. This is day 6, session number 7, and our next presenter has something very interesting to talk to you about, problems that most of us have incurred while at an airport. Alexis Clinet is a technical officer seconded by France at the Aerodrome Operations and Infrastructure section at the Air Navigation Bureau. He's been specifically involved in Aerodrome Design and Operation Panel Working Group related to aerodrome operations. And the title of his presentation is Provision of Ground Handling Services at Aerodromes. Please welcome Alexis Clinet.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this kind introduction. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for watching online. So my name is Alexis Clinet, and I'm working in the Air Navigation Bureau. I've been involved in the aerodrome operation matters, such as wildlife hazard management, operational procedures for aerodromes, the runway emergency plans, and as well as the subject of today, the ground handling services. It has been a lot of focus over the last 4 years on this subject, and so my presentation today is entitled Provision of Ground Handling Services at Aerodromes. What is the ground handling services? So it's all the services at an aerodrome necessary for the aircraft arrival at and departure from an airport, except all 8 traffic services. It's an integral part of the aviation system, and it contributes to flight and aerodrome safety, as well as efficiency and accuracy of the flight. Is not, however, the most surprising is not subject to the same level of regulation than other domains such as air operations, aerodrome operation, or ATMs. So what are the different services we're talking about? Those are passenger service handling, is all the services in link with the passengers at the departure, arrival, or transfer of passenger, and it includes as well the checking of all the documents. The baggage maybe is the one that passengers are the most concerned about. Will my bags arrive on time? Will it be damaged, lost? So those are the cargo and baggage which manipulate load from the sorting area. So it could be automated or it could be a manual process. Ramp handling is the marshalling of the aircraft, the support for aircraft parking, support for aircraft on the ramp. And we have more specialized services, aircraft servicing, such as de-icing, fuel, and aircraft maintenance. Those services have already some specific provisions in global specific provision that we will see later. So what are the challenges associated with those services? It has been known that the competition increased over the past few years, and especially with the objective to lower the cost of those services. By lowering the cost, it impacts the capacity for ground handling services to maintain the staffing level and the competency level. And as I mentioned in my slide, this is a complex activity. It's the busiest area of the aerodrome. It's the apron, and it has the most movement is around on the apron around the aircraft. It has some complex activity, as we have seen, and which are handled by multiple actors. Some of the ground handling services provide a set or bundle of service, but most of the time the companies provide one service or provide a very specific service, and it can be outsourced by the airline as well. And just figures that we roughly estimate at 75% the number of services which are outsourced. As we can see in this Gantt diagram on the right side of the slides, this Gantt diagram is for a turnaround of a wide-body jet, and as we can see, every operation is scheduled for 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a very complex activity and associated with a lot of hazards. Those are the working conditions. Hazard was that we can have in this part of the apron can be the vehicle and aircraft moving, live reactor, and as well as working in poor light condition or poor weather conditions. As well as, so hazard will be manual handling, working at 8, and with hazardous substance, for example. And as I said before, because of this competition to lower the cost, there is difficulty for the operator to maintain the training and the competency of the people involved with a high rate of turnover for the people, and the difficulty to implement a safety culture on all those services, on all those companies, including as well equipment. We have more complex and larger equipment on the aircraft, and there is as well a difficulty with the maintenance of this equipment in some conditions. With larger aircraft, higher number of turnaround and operation during the day. There is a need so to have a balance between the competitivity, cost efficiency, and safety. Safety, as it's been estimated that the ground damage for ground handlings is around 5 per 10,000 movements, which estimated roughly that as it's been difficult to estimate the cost, but some studies show that it's estimated to billions of US dollars per year. And this is a health issue as well as disruption in operations. On the right part of the slide, you can see the graph, which has the number of accidents in 2018 in the safety report which has been published in the ICAO safety report this year. The ramp damage is included in the bar that is entitled GS, ground safety. But my point is some occurrences are also might not be detected during on the ramp. Like, for example, if a ground collision happened just before the departure of the aircraft from the apron, we have less check to ensure the recovery of this incident. And for example, ground collision can lead to some problem with pressurization. We can have a mass balance error during the apron, and it could lead ultimately, is theoretical, but to tail strikes or loss of control in flight. In addition, to add to this aspects, where the structure of the industry is very complex. Ground handling service provider is usually directly contracted by air operators and aerodrome operators. The states directly regulate those both stakeholders, air operators and aerodrome operators. But in most of the situation, it evolves for each state, but the ground handling service provider is not directly regulated. It has some provision for the air operator to contract for the agreement on the ground handling service provider, but there is not a direct link from the state. The ground handling service provider can as well have be audited against industry standard. And this can, for example, be requested by the operator, or it can be as well a way to lower the premium of the insurance. We have as well some occupational health and safety regulation, which are not directly linked with the aviation world, but which as well impact the ground handling service provider activities, and which we need to ensure consistency between both. So no one in this structure, no one has the overall control of the ground handling service provider, neither accountability. So in 2014, the states and stakeholders decided to have a gap analysis of the existing documentation and of the existing regulation. It started in 2014. They decided to include it, the Air Navigation Commission included it in the Air Navigation Work Program, and they created the Ground Handling Task Force. The Ground Handling Task Force was member states participated, as well as some international organizations, such as Airport Council International, Airport Service Association, International Business Association Council, IATA, and ICAO. It has been working for 4 years with coordination with multiple panels, such as flight operations, safety management, facilitation. It was under the auspice of the Aerodrome panel. And the objective was to identify additional provision to complement existing requirements and best practices. This was highly professional person. I've assisted to the last meeting of this ground handling task force, and it has been a very interesting discussion and the outcomes. So before coming to the outcomes of this group, I haven't been totally fair because there are some provision, ICAO provision, global to and standards for ground handling. The Annex 6 Part 1 has a definition of what is ground handling service provider. That's the one I used at the beginning. And there is as well provision for air operator to have arrangement consistent with the nature and extent to the operation specified, as well as the air operator need to have those arrangement and the procedures in their operation manual. Other ICAO provision that which has been disseminated into different annexes. For example, the Annex 8 on airworthiness of aircraft contain provision on maintenance, as well as the design of aircraft to be compatible with ground handling services. And we have as well on Annex 9 facilitation, facilities and services for air operator to decide to whom and how they want to have the service provided at the aerodrome. Aerodrome operation as well, we have aerodrome apron management, aerodrome servicing, we have some provision in Annex 14. So Annex 19 on safety management and safety and SSP, state safety plan, have also provisions that might relate to ground handling service provider, even if it's not directly linked to them. I forgot in this presentation as well, for example, Annex 13 with the report of accident and incident, which allow aerodrome operators and other stakeholders to detect accidents that happen on the apron. We have as well some guidance material for the jet fuel supply, some specific manual for highly specialized activities. So for jet fuel, for example, for de-icing as well. And we have as well some contribution by the industry. I've indicated that the structure was complex, but the industry have been provided services and resources over the last few years to have a more harmonized set of procedures and standards. So they provided, for example, standard operating procedures to decide who does what, when, and how, to describe who does what, when, and how, for example, and associated audit programs. We can mention ISAGO or ISBH from IATA and ASA. We can mention the documentation provided by ACI, IBAC, and ICCAA as well. Importance of those organizations, they play a role to harmonize a set of procedures on the ground. We have, for example, on the field, each air operator will contract a ground handling service provider, and each of them might have a different set of procedures. For example, for shocking the aircraft, or for the cone placement when the aircraft is on the apron. So those industries provide a set of harmonized procedures. And the group provided after a manual, a guidance material on ground handling. The objective of this manual is to provide the best practices that has been around by and make available by industries and the different states. The introduction is basically why states should spend time and resources on the ground handling services. It has as well so the guidance is directed to states, and it gives the guidance on how other stakeholders might operate. So, for example, for state is the inclusion of the ground handling services and on the state safety plan. For the stakeholders, the operator and aerodrome operator, the importance on those guidance has been specifically on the interfaces with the safety system or with the SMS of ground handling service provider, as well as operational procedures. Objective is to have a declination of those procedures locally, and on general safety, for example, procedure for walking around the aircraft, driving, FOD, adverse weather, or for the turnaround activities. So important, the focus was given on the coordination of operational procedure, which can be derivated locally or for the state and then locally. And for the GHSP, the manual insists on the application of the SMS principle for the ground handling service provider. So we'll come on for each of them. So for the state, the guidance is the inclusion in the state safety program. We don't say in those guidance include ground handling services in the state safety program. Conduct an impact assessment, assess the impact of those services, and based on the incident, accident, and safety occurrence that, for example, has been reported to you, you can conduct a safety analysis and evaluate whether there is some areas on the ground handling services that are necessary to include into the state safety program. And then you will ask, the state might ask how to manage the risk. Is the regulatory framework is designed sufficiently enough to cover all those risks? Safety assurance can be directly provided by the states, or they can have requirement so that other operator provides safety assurance and some safety promotion action, joint committee, some shared safety performance indicators, or some to have some requirement to include some the safety culture aspects inside the agreement with the stakeholders. Some states have already regulatory structure in place, have already included some oversight models, so the guidance provides as well some model that has been used by different states. For the operator as well as for the aerodrome operator, it insists on the relationship with the ground handling. So for the operator, there are some provision on the general agreement arrangement, but as well how to have more local detailed arrangement which respects the local condition. And the SMS interfaces as well. So for the air operator, when he contracts a ground handling service provider, for example, to have some requirement on safety and to include some requirement on the SMS interfaces for joint safety performance indicator, shared a clear notion of accountability for who is accountable on the ground, and provision of standard operating procedure. As we saw in the previous slides, the importance is the harmonization of those procedures, and that ground handling service provider might have a consistent set of procedures over the different air operators. It has as well, it insists as well on the emergency response planning (ERP) that air operator have, and which should be integrated to the, which should communicate as well to the ground handling service provider. For ground handling service provider, we have adoption of SMS principle, and the key aspect is scalability. That it should be commensurate with size and complexity. And as well, so for this we have different ICAO material. We have the Annex 19, Doc 9859, and the Safety Management Implementation website, where we will find ground handling example on this website in the future. Combined with industry best practices, so that I've already mentioned, and the key words are the three C's: communication, cooperation, and coordination. Those are complex services, and which should be handled in a competitive environment. And for example, if there is the possibility to have a collaborative decision making, to include, if the aerodrome have, for example, an airport CDM, maybe it can include the ground handling service provider on the ACDM process to be sure to have them on board, or for example on the airport operation center as well. For the aerodrome operators, they have a more intricate relationship with a ground handling service provider. They are the tenant of the airport, so they can have different models like license concession, SMS interfaces that I mentioned when they license a ground handling service provider, and should have consideration for operational safety, so the safety rules, usage of equipment, foreign object debris, adverse weather. There are a lot of provision which will be released in the PANS aerodrome document. I will be back on this later on. And for example, to take into consideration those services when there is a redesign of the apron. So awareness of the documentation, we will have a seminar in 2019 in November in Cairo, and we might have some other seminars next year in 2020 in the regional office, as well as communication activities which will take place once the documentation is published. And now, so the documentation manual on ground handling will be published in the next couple of weeks. We have as well the PANS aerodrome that I mentioned will be adopted in early 2020, and the objective of the procedure, operational procedures that it contains to be applicable in November 2020. And the group is now considering the development of standard and procedure to supplement what has been included in the guidance, and to supplement to complement what is already been in the different annexes. So I've been really glad to be able to share this with you, and to speak about the ground handling service provider. And thank you very much. If you have any question, I have given the email from the airport operation and infrastructure section. I'm finishing my segment here, but feel free to communicate with the section or with me by giving me your information over the social network. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions? Yes, I would invite you to please step ahead. Yes, thank you. Yes, please.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm David Gamper with ACI, Airports Council International. I just wanted to thank you for a very good presentation, Alexis, and I think you're perfectly right what you said about the relationship with airport operators. I also wanted to mention that we've been working on a template agreement between ground handlers and airport operators, so that an airport operator can know what to put in the agreement that they have with their ground handlers. As you mentioned, things like the tenancy question, of course, all the apron safety considerations and maybe service level considerations. There are lots of things that we've put in there, about 15 chapters in this template. So for any airport operators here, I just mentioned that we have made that available to ACI members and would be happy to share it. So it's a comment rather than a question.
Thank you, David. I think there are a lot of issues on this question of ground operator. I think it's an important thing. The key things is about harmonization of procedures. So everything that can provide some more harmonization, every initiatives are welcome in this domain.
Good afternoon, Alexis. I thought it was a fantastic presentation. Thanks very much for that. I had a couple of questions because we're struggling with this a little bit in terms of exactly as you pointed out earlier in the presentation. It's not completely clear under the current ICAO system how you do all the aspects of the ground handling. So we have a situation where we have fixed base operators that are also in the same ramp as the normal operators for the scheduled aircraft. And we have a differing regime in terms of how we certify a fixed base operator versus a scheduled ground service provider. So on the scheduled side, we have the IATA standard that we've adopted, initial standard, but then there's some pushback from the fixed base operators because they think, well, we can't expect them to go ISAGO or something like that since they're much smaller. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about that, which is the framework that's being produced. Does it also cover, for example, fixed base operators who may be handling on the same ramp and doing big space? The second question is about self-handling. So of course we have the right for airlines to self-handle themselves, and to what extent do they also have to adopt certain practices and processes? Will the same manual then have to be used or practices by the airlines now in terms of how they self-handle? So I just want a little bit of
Thank you.
perspective.
Thank you very much for these questions. Those are very important questions, and we have two different aspects. For the small ground handling service provider, as I mentioned, there is like a different size and or have not the same size. We have some multinational as well as some local ones. But the key things in this manual is to give guidance, like to provide some support to the state to handle those which might not be only via certification, for example, but for example, when there is a contract with a service provider, maybe there are some aspects that can be provided within the contract as well. And for the different service provider, there are some regulatory provisions, some states, which have different regulatory framework. And they can have, so it's covered through the different example, yes, to answer your question.
And for self-handling?
And yeah, for the self-handling as well. It should be covered. I mean, I'm not giving any, I don't really know the situation in the state, but what is important is to cover all the ground safety handling activities within the aerodrome, whatever the structure of this operator. So then it can be through certification, through as well some requirement on the different stakeholders that you place upon, and if they want to operate in this airfield, or for example on the aerodrome operator, for the people on the aerodromes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
So what was the website? IOA at website?
The SMI website.
Yes.
It's the link is on the ICAO public portal, and there is a link to the safety management implementation website.
Okay, well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Alexi.
Thanks.